and welcome to another episode of That's Absurd. Please elaborate. I am one of 3 of the people that you'll be hearing from on this episode. My name is Trace Dominguez, joined as always, almost always, by my best friend, Julian Hugan.
If you were gonna switch it up and say joined by my best friend, our guest today, Joe Scott, I think I would have died.
I am offended. I'm a little offended, I have to say.
Of a broken heart. Yeah, now you put yourself in a no-win situation.
Oh, no,
this was a mistake.
I'm blushing now. Oh, God.
50% of the other people here against
your face
you.
is the exact same color as your shirt right now.
It is. It's really a lot. Wow. Okay, well, I feel bad. My two best friends.
Wait, Joe, you barely do podcasts with Joe. This is the first time. How dare you, sir?
Well, technically the second time. I was on his podcast.
Okay, all right, you got a point. All right,
yeah.
I
get 1 point.
So yes, today, as Julian said, today we also have a guest, Joe Scott of the YouTube channel Answers with Joe. So thanks for being here, Joe.
I'm excited.
I'm excited to have you. I love when we have guests because it really lays bare just how idiots we are, I think. And in case this is the first time you're listening to That's Absurd, please elaborate. Welcome. In this show, we take questions from our audience and we answer them. The more ridiculous and absurd and far out and weird the questions are, the more fun it is for us. And we do the science research and desktop research and history research, whatever we have to do to try and answer those questions to the best of our ability. So in this episode, we're going to have 3 different questions. And the first person to answer a question is Julian.
Yes. And as we always do when we have a guest, one of our questions is from our guest. So, Joe, your question that I had to look into for this episode was, and I'll quote you exactly, how much different would technology be if there was no war?
Ooh.
Joe, first of all, why did this question come into your noodle?
Because I was walking around trying to think of questions, and that's one of the questions that popped into my noodle.
I was instructed. I suppose if we have a guy on who does a show called Answers with Joe, you'll get a straight answer. That's fair.
One would hope.
That's why, Private Gump, why'd you put that rifle together so fast? Because you told me to, sir.
That was the exact answer I just gave you. Like, why'd you come up with that question? You told me to?
You're a goddamn genius, Gump.
Classic. So actually, I do have a good answer to this, as to why this thought was in my head. So a while back, I did a video, and I'm curious what you guys think of this take, where I was defending, I guess, the private space flight thing that's going on right now, because everybody's talking about, like, it's billionaires in space and stuff like that. And I think it's more important than that. But anyway, but my point was that, like, I feel like space travel is kind of like a replacement for war in terms of, like, technology development endeavor, let's put it that way, because war has always been like this thing that, like, we always had to find new and more innovative ways to kill each other or not get killed, and that kind of spurred technology. But I feel like space does the same thing but without all the killing.
Yeah, maybe
that was a take that I had anyway. So
it's more of like a competition kind of situation, but there's hopefully not a lot of killing, hopefully.
It's interesting that the space race in particular was what you thought of as being separate from military advancement, which we will get to. I think you already see where I'm going. But I did love this question. Normally, I'm more science-oriented in the questions that I tackle, but I'm also a history geek in my free time. I saw a meme the other day that was like, when guys turn 35, you have to pick one of 2 personalities, either smoking meats or World War II history. And it was so damn accurate. Yeah. I don't have access to a barbecue, so I had to, by default.
You have to do the latter, yeah.
But it's true. I also I love world history in particular. I think it gives such great context for why the world exists as it does today. And of course, armed conflict is part and parcel with world history. Really hard to extricate the two. One follows the other all the time.
Yeah.
So, I love this question. I can think of plenty of modern examples off the top of my head that were developed either specifically by the military for military applications or because they had application in military and civilian realms. But what I was curious of is if we went much farther back in history, like early days of the existence of states and governments, which is when war first emerges.
I was going to say, early days of days.
Early, yeah.
Like,
literally. Shortly after the calendar was codified and we had names for days. No, but really, because war, by definition, right, is not the same thing as, say, a conflict between individuals.
Right.
Maybe even a conflict between, tribes of humans. But it's government or state organized conflict for the purpose of the state to gain some sort of advantage over the other. Territory, resources. We just hate the look of those guys, and we want them all dead, because sometimes that happens too.
They looked at my sister.
Rome and Carthage. Rome was just like, we got to burn Carthage to the ground. We hate those guys. But anyway.
Their leader wears a different hat.
Can't have it. Not on my planet.
Butter side down.
How dare they?
Ugh.
Right. So I was wondering if early humans had technological advancements that we could trace back specifically to war. And I was wondering if something is like the wheel. Can you imagine if it was like, oh my God, we finally have a way to carry troops to battle quickly. What a game changer. So I did journalism a little bit. I reached out to Dr. Roel Knickendijk. He's a lecturer in ancient history at the University of Oxford, and his specialty happens to be ancient warfare. And I posed this exact question to Dr. Knickendijk. I hope I'm saying that right. He's Dutch. There's 2 J's in his name.
You're doing great.
He took the time to answer this question, so I hope I'm properly giving it the respect that's due.
I hope so too. I love it when you do a journalism, by the way.
I
think it's great. I did a journalism for this week too, but they didn't respond.
Did you know, though, that you can just ask people on the internet questions and sometimes they'll look into them for you?
If only there was a podcast about
If you have questions, please send them in. Okay. So Dr. Knickendijk wrote back and he said, most ancient military technology was simply the military application of known tech, right? Metalworking, construction, shipbuilding. There's no particular intensity to technological development in the field of warfare. And even in periods of change, there was not the same sense in which these activity in one area would have a knock-on effect in other areas. Innovation in warfare is unlikely to change the world if there isn't a wider culture and infrastructure of technological innovation in which advances in one field will cross-fertilize with others. He goes on to say technology wouldn't be all that different with or without war until the technology of war becomes one of a cluster of rapidly developing technological sectors that feed on and amplify each other. So that's a very polite and thoughtful way of saying, no, not really, dude. There's no specific technological development in the ancient world that was solely due to warfare. And it makes sense because first, it was really interesting. He said the concept of technological advancement in these days was different, right? They didn't spend tons of money developing military new metalworking skills and stuff specifically just because
I got 3 sticks.
Them Romans over there got bronze.
They got 3 whole sticks on me mod pile.
Yeah, well, if we sharpen the sticks, I need 8 billion quid to develop pointy sticks.
Well,
Joe,
I've got
so
3
sorry.
sticks, so I'm a government contractor.
There's a running character of a British peasant who has 3 sticks, and he has to come up almost every episode. So
Aaron
now you know.
Aronson.
But
He's probably
anyway,
Dutch, to be honest. He's probably like a Dutch citizen, but he lives in the UK now.
Oh,
He's Aaron Aronson, maybe? I don't know.
when you consider how many different countries have taken over the British Isles at some point. Anyway, so all that is to say that, if you go really far back in time, there's no technological advancements from warfare because they were pretty much just taking, we already know how to work metals because it's useful for making tools. Oh, we can make one into a sword.
We're making shovels already. We just make our shovels pointier, and now when I poke somebody with them, it's obviously not that simple, but it's basically, but that's the idea, right? We're already making this thing. We're already making scythes to cut down wheat. So why don't we just cut down the enemy?
Just cut off heads.
Yeah. Let's do that. Or we're making boats already. What if we just made a really big boat and then we could row up to other boats and jump on their boat and then kill all those guys on that boat.
And hit them with our shovel.
Or hit them with our boat. just jam the boat. If we put a giant shovel on the front of the boat,
the end of the boat,
and go really fast.
I like that.
All technology stems from shovels, Joe, is what we're getting at.
Basically, a boat is just a really big shovel.
Yeah, you thought it was the wheel, fire? No. Shovels.
It's all the shovels.
I have nothing to substantiate that. I hope Dr. Knickendijk isn't listening to this right now. Okay.
I hope he is, and he's upset.
But yeah, if you trace the evolution of warfare, I think a lot of people who grow up in our modern world don't realize that, like, even the concept of a standing army and like a dedicated defense or military industrial sector is fairly recent. Like the United States, we had the Continental Army, right, when we fought the British in the Revolutionary War, but afterwards it disbanded, and our army was like literally 700 guys for years.
Yeah.
That was our army. Which is why, by the way, the militia is mentioned in the Constitution, and the president is the commander-in-chief of the Army, Navy, and militia. It was basically like, oh, if somebody else tries to invade us, guess what? Like, you're fighting in a militia now. Like, you're in the army now.
Yeah, we need some militia.
Grab your musket.
Well, I mean, and then there's the difference between Minutemen versus militia versus standing versus regulars.
Right.
The regular army, which was people who were being paid to be in the army, but they volunteered. And
right, but the militia was still just like home defense force and part of the United States' defensive kind of strategy approach in the early days.
It's like a volunteer fire department for war.
Yeah. The volunteer
and there's like
fire at people department.
Yeah. And then there's the person running the fire department works for the city and is just like, you guys are idiots. Let's train you up a little bit.
Yeah. So more recently, this concept of total war, where during wartime, the entire society mobilizes and chips into the war effort. That's something that only really emerges in World War I. So a little over 100 years ago was when we started going, okay, during wartime, it's full out. Drop whatever you were doing. You were making engines. Those engines are going in tanks and airplanes. You were making boats. Guess what? Now they're cargo ships and battleships. Yes.
Which, if you think about it, is exactly the same as taking a shovel and making it pointier. You're already doing this thing. It's, hey, you already make cars. We're going to just put wings on those and change the design. But generally speaking, you're already making this technology. And I think we tend to associate it with they stopped doing what they were doing, they invented a whole new thing, and then they completely changed. And it's just like, no, they were already building stuff that was very similar. They were building boats. Now they're building a slightly different kind of boat because the government's paying them to do it. Yes, of course, there's going to be innovation and stuff. I'm not saying there's not. I'm just saying, I don't know. In my head, it was always like, wow, they went from doing this to doing something completely different. And it's, no, they went from doing something similar to something more specialized for the need of people in charge at
they
that
took
point.
Existing factories and they converted them to wartime use. But like the production lines were already set up and in place, and like you had skilled workers already. You're just diverting what you were doing. But a lot of these technologies that developed rapidly during the World Wars, like during World War II, aviation makes a huge leap, right? You start at the beginning of the war, like the United States is just barely getting out of having biplanes. And by the end of the war, Germans have jet fighters flying, and the British had them too. They didn't use them in combat, but they also had their own jet fighter.
And rockets.
And it looked...
And rockets,
Rockets, yeah. And it looks like this huge technological leap because of war. But a lot of these technologies were already in development long before the war even kicked off. The first jet engine was patented in 1930.
Yeah.
You know, and then they spent years actually developing it and testing it in a laboratory. But somebody had the idea for a jet engine because air travel's an emerging private sector. Getting goods and people around faster, even if you don't need like a high performance fighter jet, it still makes a ton of sense. So people are still interested in developing the jet engine.
Neat.
Even in times of peace.
It was just more the implementation of it. Like it was that last step of, okay, we've got it. Let's get it out there.
Yeah, and you could look at war as like supercharging the development of these things, because all of a sudden having this technological edge, especially in modern warfare, is a huge benefit. So governments dump all this money into these technologies. But you're basically accelerating a process that was already underway for a lot of things. Not for everything, but for many, many things. You're just accelerating it.
So I guess that's the question that I was asking was like, I mean, these things might happen, but they might not have been as accelerated. So would we be like a little bit further back technologically?
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's one interesting thing to think of. But another thing to also consider is how diverting time and effort into things that are for a military application detracts from research and expertise and skilled workers that could make things and develop things that aren't for the military. And I think a great example of this is post-war Japan, right?
Okay.
So after the Second World War, part of the treaty in Japan's unconditional surrender, part of the terms was you're not allowed to have any sort of military industrial complex at all, right? And so Japan is still turning out these engineers and people who are very skilled, but what fields do they have available to go into? Well, in the United States still, defense contractors pay a huge salary to engineers. So they attract like some of the best talent. But other sectors like automotive, they get engineers that aren't as skilled coming in. Japan, because the only fields that these very talented, educated people could go into was things like automotive or things with civilian application, they have a post-war economic boom, and even to this day, they have a reputation for developing incredibly reliable, long-lasting, efficient vehicles, motorcycles, and you can trace it directly to them not having a military sector post-World War II.
That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way, but that's
I guess
really
Germany,
fascinating.
too, they're known for their...
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Although it's a little more muddled in Germany because when Germany after World War II was like, all right, guys, don't do that again. And then we realized that they're basically like the gateway that the Soviet Union would be like fighting through if they were to roll into Europe. We eased up on West Germany's no having any sort of military development policy. We were like, okay, maybe you can. So Germany today develops cannons and tanks that are huge successful exports around the world. So they still have that military industrial base. Japan, not as much. They have some tank manufacturing domestically, and it's all pretty much one company. Every defense thing in Japan is made by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. Yeah, the car company, that one. That Mitsubishi. I love the joke about Yamaha, where like you're in a store and you're like, I need a keyboard. And the Yamaha salesman's, oh, right this way, sir. And you're like, hey, this is going to sound weird, but I also need a motorcycle. And the Yamaha salesman's like, you're not going to believe this. But in Japan, Mitsubishi makes basically all the big heavy metal stuff, right? So they have their own version of the American F-16 they co-developed and put some technology into. But aside from that, there's not a ton of military tech because they're still bound by this treaty where they're supposed to be only basically allowed to have a force for self-defense. And so, again, all these very talented engineers go into other fields like developing automotive. So I think a good analogy is like Formula One. Do either of you watch racing at all?
Some
of it?
Yeah.
So Formula One cars are like, I mean, they cost millions and millions of dollars to develop. They're highly, highly specialized. And I was just curious, what technologies have trickled down from Formula One? And I found articles that were like, oh man, so many. And then it's like active aerodynamics and carbon fiber. And I'm like, my 2003 Honda Element does not have active aerodynamics. Like, I'm not seeing the benefit of this.
No.
But if you go back to early days of Formula One, a big development was double overhead camshafts, which is just basically like a mechanism that controls the valves that let air in and exhaust out of the cylinders, you know? And these are super common on cars now. So in the early days, this expensive Formula One racing thing actually was providing some advancements that we saw in our common everyday vehicles now. Nowadays, it's so specialized for racing in Formula One that we're not really going to get those technological benefits. And I think you can look at the military in a very similar way, where we still spend a ton of money, but we're developing things that I don't see how they'd have any civilian application at this point, right? Like stealth fighters.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a big geek. I love airplanes and I'm fascinated by like stealth, but there's no good reason for a civilian airplane to not show up on radar. That's kind of a terrible thing, actually.
Yeah, that would be
you
bad.
Know?
The FAA is having enough trouble.
Yeah. You go back 70 years and radar makes sense for militaries and for civilians, right? It'd be nice to track all these flying things that are going around all of a sudden. But after that, we need to defeat radar if we're in a conflict. Yeah, no, that's not going to translate to, the new stealth Boeing 7X7. Oh, great. Nobody will find it. Somebody who's tired of a Twitter account tracking their jet movement will have... But that's all just publicly available information anyway.
Yeah.
No comment.
So I think back to when I used to work at the museum. And when I worked at the museum, we were at a time in history that we were portraying in the late 1800s where the military wasn't even at the forefront of technology. So we were portraying the 1880s and 90s. So late 80s, early 90s, the U.S. military had a regular army that were all volunteers, and those volunteers were using black powder weapons. Smokeless gunpowder had already existed.
I was going to say, very smoky.
Repeating rifles already existed, were in the hands of civilians, but the military wasn't spending the money on those. They were using single-shot black powder weapons, even up until the early 1890s. And so that was fairly common. They weren't muzzle loaders, they were breech loaders, but they were still like single shot. You fire once, you open it up, you put another bullet in, you put it back down again.
So Billy the Kid was walking around better armed than U.S. soldiers were.
Yes, that's right. Correct. And in fact, when George Custer was killed, he was a real douche, so it was fine. When he was killed, they were using this weapon, but they were using copper cartridges instead of brass cartridges. And so the copper was expanding and getting caught as they were firing so much. And so the U.S. military at the time was not the forefront of technology. And this was only 50 years before the World War II time period we're talking about. So it's just like this changed blink of an eye overnight. Whatever quick analogy you want to use, the U.S. military went from being like, a very large country with sort of a backwater military to then being this huge military might. And that mostly happened in the early 20th century.
Yeah, that was like a World War I thing. That was when the U.S. really got on the world stage as a military power.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's fascinating to think about because I think we fall into the trap, all of us, of the 20th century's propaganda on itself. Not a negative word. I'm saying we talk a lot about all of the success we had in the early 20th century militarily. It's a big part of the national pride in the 20th century. And the whole largest generation of Americans all grew up learning how great everything was that their parents had done. And I'm not saying it wasn't. All I'm saying is that gets passed down. And so we think of it as, oh man, we've done this great thing. We've always been so good at this. But working at this museum, I was just like, wow, really fascinating to think of. We're wearing uniforms in the 1880s, the US military, that are based on German designs and French designs, because those are the biggest, most popular, most successful militaries in the world in the late 19th century. And so we copied them. Like those tall kind of stovepipey hats with a little brim that even today the infantry wears are based on a French design from the 19th century, because the French army was so cool that we wanted to look cool like them. We used to talk about it in tours all the time. And it's fascinating.
These uniforms and a lot of military thinking, they were still worn at the beginning of World War I. But World War I was like this watershed moment where technology became such an important factor for winning battles. Because before that, we had developed machine guns, but we hadn't used them against other people with machine guns. So this was the first time that happened. So you get in the early days, cavalry charges in these bright blue and red uniforms across an open field, and they just get mowed down.
Yeah.
And by the end of the war, that's when you start seeing people switch to more camouflage uniforms to hide themselves and trench warfare tactics to stay protected.
Talk about that a lot in tours as well, because there were people would come into the museum as reenactors, and they would come and visit and stay for the week. And they have the Zulauf from the mid 19th century, and they were wearing bright, colored clothing often, because the point was that their people could see them.
Yeah, they wanted to know.
It didn't matter if the other
people
could see them. The elite soldiers were wearing these really ridiculous outfits, and the snipers there were some that were wearing green and hiding, but mostly people were still quite out there using Napoleonic war tactics, where they're lining up and on a line and standing 100 yards from the other line and just shooting at each other. All of that was fairly common still in the late 19th century. So it all just changed so quickly in the early 20th. Really fascinating.
World War I, I think is the Caspian War. Is that what I'm thinking of? Maybe I'm getting that name wrong. But yeah, it was horses and tanks on the same battlefield.
Yeah.
It's just mind-blowing.
Crazy. It is.
Yeah. Crimean War?
Crimean War. Yeah, thank you.
Crimean War. Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. The Charge of the Light Brigade, right.
So how much different would technology be if there was no war at all?
So, of course, it's impossible to say.
Right.
But I do think, because there are still other factors that drive competition, right, and advancement, like economic factors, you're still going to get a lot of these same technologies developed. Maybe not as fast because of that effect of switching an entire economy into producing stuff for wartime and encouraging massive research and technological advancement. But Joe, I did love that you brought up the space race as something that is wholly just like a competition for competition's sake or national pride or something, because I think that's another kind of 20th century propaganda we've sold ourselves. And it's not true at all, because the applications of having the ability to put stuff into space for a military are huge.
Yeah.
We just don't talk about that part.
Yeah.
But if you can put, a little beeping ball in orbit over your rival nation on the other side of the planet, you could feasibly put a warhead on that, which is part of why Sputnik actually freaked America out so much in the 50s, right? That everybody made the same conclusion. Well, if they can get a satellite up there, they can get a nuclear warhead up there. There's also implications for intelligence gathering. If you can put satellites in orbit, you can put spy satellites up and you can know what other people are doing all the time. So space, I don't know actually if we would have developed space as much if we were not so concerned with warfare. GPS is a technology that was invented for military purposes.
That's what I was thinking of. If there was no war, would we have GPS? Probably not.
Maybe not yet.
There'd be who would build it? What would be the purpose? It would just be for getting around, just for mapping technologies. And so National Geographic would, I don't know who would build it.
There's economic benefits to being able to accurately know where stuff is all the time in shipping or in aviation. We actually the US government started sharing GPS data publicly because of a tragedy in civilian aviation. There was a Korean airline flight that strayed into Soviet territory in 1983 and was shot down. And because of that, we were like, okay, well, we have this technology that would make that safer.
Let's give you access to one of the bands that we're broadcasting from these satellite constellations.
But that was the catalyst to bring it into the civilian realm. And now, obviously, there's tons of great applications for GPS. It's a part of our everyday lives. And businesses see, like when I put something into my Google Maps, there's an opportunity for corporations there because they can say, hey, if you're going in this direction, you're going to go buy a Starbucks, right? And
doesn't a Big Mac sound good on the way?
Yeah, make a left by that Starbucks that smell the pumpkin spice aroma coming out of it as you make a left turn.
Pumpkin spice.
There's still incentives to develop these technologies. Whether they happen as fast, I don't know. I think the main thing you're going to miss out on ultimately are things that have such a niche.
Julian, give me your best dinosaur roar.
Oh, God, an asteroid! It's horrible!
Wow, that was not where I expected that to go. We're popping in before the show to tell you about I Know Dino. It's a dinosaur podcast.
We think of those dinosaurs being this thing that's been dead for tens of millions of years. Even so, studying dinosaurs can still teach us stuff that is relevant to the world today.
Yeah, like climate models to help us understand global warming.
Migration patterns of dinosaur lineages, they tell us about Earth's changing continents.
We can also study dinosaur diets, what plants lived then and maybe what animals and how they interact.
And, this is super cool, many dinosaur injuries, paleopathologies, they're the first known occurrences of diseases.
And they talk about all this kind of stuff on I Know Dino. It comes out every week with new dinosaur stories that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Like I hadn't heard of a lot of these, which is pretty cool.
You can find I Know Dino on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts are. And if you found us, you can probably find them. Go check them out. Military application like stealth fighters, like high-powered, fully automatic rifles. Firearms, they probably still exist for hunting purposes at the very least. And saying, oh, war doesn't exist, that doesn't rule out conflict between individuals. I'm sure some people would still like to own firearms in this scenario. Yeah, why not? Yeah, the really, or like artillery. I can't see any reason why that would need to exist, although I'm sure there's some that I haven't thought of. One realm that I think we haven't considered that I think is possibly more interesting than what technology would look like without war is what society would look like without war.
Ooh.
Because again, I'm thinking, more recent military history when we started actually engaging in total war and the whole society got involved in war, right? This is a lot of the emergence of civil rights. Right? This is when you start actually seeing African Americans in military units that go and serve with distinction and do a large part to show that they are equal and deserve equal rights. How can you tell them when they come back from war, no, you still aren't equal to your countrymen when you serve just
that.
as much as they did?
Right. It took a while. They did that in the late 19th century and after the Civil War and didn't seem to matter too much.
Yeah.
People were still like, no.
You're still not a real person.
Didn't count,
unfortunately.
didn't do good enough. Or workers' rights and women getting into more jobs, expanding the role outside of being housewives, because men were off fighting wars, able-bodied men, so you still need people to actually rivet these things together. Yeah. I think that's a really fascinating question to ask. There was a history lecture I loved. It was such a weird sentence this guy said, but he was talking about pre-World War II, how much the entire world's ideology was basically founded on races and racial superiority, and, Europeans are above the people like Asians and blah, 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 blah. And then we all went to war in World War II, and especially at the end when we saw the natural end point of this ideology, which was like fascism and genocide, and collectively went, maybe this is actually terrible, and started to reassess that. But that only happened 80 years ago.
Yeah.
That's not that long ago. And so, like, how would our society still be operating in this way if it weren't for war? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, like, hey, war's awesome. Thank goodness for
It's
war.
fantastic.
Is your society in a rut? Consider war.
What is it good for?
No. Apparently.
Racial equality.
Something.
Potentially potential catalysts for societal change.
But it's not, totally clear cut as I'm sure everybody would like it to be. And
Interesting.
It's an interesting question that deserves a lot of consideration. So I had more fun in the end thinking about, how would, more than the technology, how would the world we live in look today without war? Could you even go back, though, and say, war may be like the cause of some of this racial ideology if you go far back enough? I don't know.
Grievances passed on over and over again throughout the millennia.
The crumbs and the yelling bows, you know what I'm saying?
I don't know. It's a fun counterfactual to play with, and there's no way of knowing. But for your question specifically in terms of technology, I don't think it would be that different, maybe just a little delayed, or maybe in some ways even ahead, because more brain power is going into the things that we see in our civilian lives every day.
I will have to say, like, I had bought into this idea that I'm not that I'm in favor of war, but it might just be like one of those things
have to have that caveat.
But maybe it was one of those things that kind of pushed us ahead technologically. But I think all of this kind of gives me more to think about here. It might be more of a chicken and egg thing. It's war accelerated technology and technology accelerated war.
Yeah. You totally started with, Julian. We already had shovels. We just started using them for war. Mm-hmm. And that applies, I think, across everything, where it's just like we already had nuclear physicists. They were already doing their work. They were probably going to do the thing that they were going to do anyway, but they would have spent all their time doing it for something that would have benefited civilians as opposed to benefited military. So maybe at some point somebody would have gotten them all together to invent fusion. Maybe we'd have fusion already, because instead of inventing things that weren't fusion related, they would have spent all their time working on energy, because that's what they really wanted to do anyway, is understand the atom.
We have fusion bombs.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
We don't have fusion sustainable energy, but we have a military application of fusion. And I did look into like when scientists started splitting the atom, when it was like in the 1930s, well before World War II, is when they actually had their first like experiments on confirming Einstein's theories from 1905 about the relationship between mass and energy. So I'm sure somebody would have developed nuclear power because it has a useful civilian application. But then in World War II, you have this incentive to, let's develop a super weapon and have a bunch of the smartest people out in the desert figuring out how to make a bomb with the same science.
There was a conversation at some point that's like, hey, you know those people trying to make a new power plant and understand atoms? Nerds. We can use that.
Oh, what? I can flatten a city? Hold on. Let me get them on the phone.
Fascinating. Thank you, Julian. Thank you for that answer. And thank you for that question, Joe.
Glad to have it answered.
Let's take a little break, come back, and we'll get another question, which is also history related.
Ooh. Welcome back to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. For the first segment, I tackled Joe Scott's question on how different technology would be without war, and now it's Joe Scott's turn to answer a question. Joe, what's your question and who's it from?
I believe we have an audio clue, don't we?
We do have an audio clip from this.
Hi, this is Cari in Chicago, and I'm wondering, which mundane parts of modern living do you think are most likely to be misinterpreted by future historians? Like, there's this great illustrated exercise called The Motel of Mysteries by David Macaulay, and it reminded me of issues that culinary historians are running into these days. There's this well-known mysterious third spice that was in addition to salt and pepper, which is thought to be perhaps sugar, but it's unknown at this time. But even simple things in a recipe, like a square of chocolate, it could end up being a rabbit hole for them because bar sizes and the squares they're in change over time and can vary between manufacturers. There's also that ancient Sumerian joke about the dog that walked into a bar, and it makes me wonder just how invaluable Urban Dictionary and Know Your Meme will be if the Wayback Machine manages to preserve them for thousands of years into the future. Because we preserve so much of daily life with social media, so I wonder what could be so ubiquitous that we end up neglecting to document it. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Thanks for that, Cari.
Wow, Cari.
Really thoughtful.
Motel of Mysteries. You know what? I think I know exactly what Cari's talking about. Joe, have you seen any of this? Do you know
I
what
had
they're
not
referencing?
before this, but yeah, I have much to talk about.
There's a photo from 8th grade, I remember, of a woman. It's supposed to be like, an anthropologist's depiction of what ancient people look like. And she's got like a toilet seat around her neck and it's misinterpreted as a necklace. Yeah. That was deep in my brain. I hadn't thought of that in like 20 years.
Okay, so I had never heard of this book before. I want to thank her for turning me onto this book. This was an adorable book. This was adorable because I went online and I started like searching around for it because I never heard of it before. And I saw probably at least 3 different comments that were just like what you just said, Julian. It's like, does anybody remember this book? It had a blue cover and there was a lady with a toilet seat over her head. And that's the only thing I really remember about it. Does anybody know this book? And so like somebody figured it out and it was like this, I guess, millennial mystery thing of everybody remembers this, but nobody knows what it was. It's like a Mandela effect kind of thing.
Mandela effect.
But so like when we met and we were picking out questions and you guys had a big long list of questions, I guess the thing that drew me to this one, and I immediately regretted it after I chose this one because I started thinking about it. I was like, there's no real answer to this. I don't know. Like there's so much.
That's the best kind of absurd question.
But I think I was drawn to it just because I don't know. I'm at that stage of life where nothing is making sense anymore. There's already things from like the past that just like totally don't exist anymore from when I was growing up. I spend a lot of time thinking about how fast things change and how people are going to like look back at this time in the future. Because just looking back 2 decades, there's things that just like are mind blowing how much different things are now. So I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot. Seen social norms change so much in my lifetime and in the last 20 years. And so anyway, I go and I start looking at this book. Like I said, it is a delight. I'll tell you a little bit about it. It was written in 1979, author David Macaulay. So yeah, it's about an archaeologist. It's a parody of King Tut's tomb because it's about a guy in the future. It's set in the year 4022, so it's 2,000 years.
Oh wow, that's a while in the future.
Yeah, so it's 2,000 years in the future, and it's an archaeologist who, according to the book, has not done anything of note, nothing noteworthy, and then he like stumbles on basically a buried motel. And this is very of its time, I guess. But the story of what happened to the world was that it was buried under junk mail.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah,
which I could see it.
Very Hitchhiker's Guide. Yeah.
And in fact, the country is called USA. Like not like they see USA and they think it's called USA. So the USA is no longer around in this world. But he basically like falls through a sinkhole or something, and he lands in front of this like motel. But he thinks it's a tomb, like a burial complex. And like I said, it's a lot. It's a kind of a take on the King Tutankhamun discovery because like he cracks open the door and he holds the candle, and they're like, "What do you see?" And he says, "Wonderful things." And the whole thing. And in fact, the name of the motel, I think this is a bit of a stretch, but the name of the motel was the Toot and Come On.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I don't want to stay there. That's a rent by the hour motel.
Yeah, exactly.
They're Toot and Come On.
Yeah.
Toot and Come
It's got
On.
the heart-shaped bed.
Put a nickel in.
So I went to college at the University of North Texas in Denton, and like just south of Denton, there was a love motel that had like heart-shaped beds and stuff, and I knew people that went there. Anyway.
What does a heart-shaped fitted sheet look like is what I'm wondering.
Custom sheets. Wow.
How
That would get expensive.
Anyway.
Please elaborate.
Go on.
Joe, keep going. Forget this book thing. So anyway, so the whole story is about how they excavated this tomb, the motel, and all the like objects that were found in it. And because they framed the whole thing as a tomb from the start, like all of these basic motel items were like reframed as funerary items, basically. So like the TV was called the Great Altar. They called it the Great Altar. The tub is a sarcophagus. The shower cap is a ceremonial burial cap. I should point out, though, and maybe the way the world was buried under junk mail happened really fast in this world because there were 2 skeletons in this room. So
I was going to say,
shoot,
that's
fast. That's
how did
fast.
they conclude this if there were no bodies?
there were bodies.
But there were bodies.
Yeah, there was one in the bed and one in the bathtub. This is starting to sound like a true crime kind of thing. But so, in fairness to Howard Carson, which sounds just like Howard Carver, doesn't it? King Tut. Anyway. So yeah, so I'm just going to go down this list. So like the toilet is the sacred urn, and the toilet seat that you wear around your head is the sacred collar. That's the picture of the lady with the toilet seat on her head.
Of course.
That has buried itself into every millennial's like memory, apparently. So the shower nozzle and the faucet they thought they were musical instruments that you use to play music for the dead. The ice bucket, they call it the internal component enclosure. It's like a canoptic jar that holds like the innards.
organs.
For the organs and
Yeah.
stuff. That's what they think it is. The telephone is called the bell system, and they think it's a musical instrument. The tub stopper with the little chain on it, they call it the sacred pendant. And there's a plastic ficus tree that they call the plant that would not die.
Oh.
And it's
I mean, true.
They talk about how like it was made in these different parts that snap together. Somehow they breed these trees so that they snap together that way. Anyway, so in the story they keep digging and they find a whole complex of tombs. So they find all these other rooms because it's a motel. But yeah, they misinterpret everything as funerary things. So like the slots for the keys at the front desk, they think are places where grieving relatives can leave gifts for their dead loved ones.
I did not realize how much motels and tombs had in common until this point.
Yeah. Honestly, some of these I totally get.
Yeah. Next time you stay at a hotel, it'll totally change the thing. So the swimming pool is, of course, a sacred pool where the dead were cleansed in order to get into heaven.
Could have called it Tomb in Common. That's more similar.
That was way better.
Anyway.
And the cars in the parking lot they thought were animal sculptures because they were called Cougar, Jaguar, and Thunderbird
Okay.
on the side.
Wow. Of a time. Of a time.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love
All
that they
right.
have no memory of this, but they all speak English.
True.
Somehow,
Yeah.
2,000 years in the future.
I mean, there's
Very
some plot
whimsical
holes. There's a
sounding.
few plot holes.
Very
I guess.
whimsical sounding.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a fun book, and it had all these illustrations, including the headgear thing. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about it, in reference to this question, is that already there were some things in that book that was written in 1979 that I had to think a little bit to figure out what they were talking about. Because even I was like, what is this? Well, for one thing, like they have a picture of the old blocky motel room phone. And I was thinking there's probably some like Gen Alpha kids that probably don't really know exactly what that is.
And what it's
Or how
for.
to use
Yeah.
it necessarily. And the Great Altar where it's talking about that, it said that it says they worshiped 2 gods named Movie 1 and Movie 2. And I'm guessing in the
get it,
70s,
but-
hotel rooms had a little thing that you could switch back and forth between different movies
Probably
or something?
The
or?
2 channels, right?
Maybe.
Actually available.
I wonder, there must have been like a local channel. Wow, even this, we already have no, I'd have to
Right.
Yeah,
go
this
and
is
search.
lost ancient knowledge.
Yeah.
We're just, if the historians of us to the 70s are
Yeah.
like, what would that mean? We
me
understand
email-
what movies are, but
Let me email Dr. Kneikendijk real quick.
he'll tell you.
What movie 1 and movie 2 are.
Politely tell you all about it. That's fascinating.
Following up on my military question, but anyway, so I just wanted to relate all that stuff to you because I loved this book. I got it and I read it, and I'm just really glad that somebody pointed me to it because I didn't remember having this when I was growing up. I never saw it, and
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
It's been in my brain forever, and I've never known what the original source of it was. So I'm really glad that it came up again.
when they closed the lid and they put the little paper like ring around it that says sanitized
That it
for
was
your
like
protection.
sanitized?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they hypothesized that was like a chant. That was like a ceremonial chant that you would say for the dead. Sanitize for your protection.
Cute.
Sanitize for your
so anyway,
protection. Sanitize.
She talked about that in her question. She talked about the Sumerian dog joke. Are you guys familiar with this?
I'm not familiar with that.
Wait. No.
It's almost there.
Wait. I do know. This came up in 8th grade as well. No, I.
What is the Sumerian dog joke?
I'd read about this a little while back and I'd forgotten about it. But yeah, apparently it was found on a clay tablet back in the 1800s somewhere. And it dates to the 18th century BCE. So Bronze Age?
A minute ago. A
minute ago. It had a joke on there. And the joke is a dog entered a tavern and said, I can't see a thing. I'll open this one.
What?
That is the entirety of the joke.
What? I don't.
I guess that's Cari's
I don't
point,
get
is
it.
that we don't get it.
I'll read it again. A dog entered a tavern and said, I can't see a thing. I'll open this one.
I honestly do not get this joke. I'm gonna need someone from
But again, I
ancient
think-
Sumeria.
I think
to
that's Cari's
explain
point.
to me.
That even though this joke was probably hilarious at the time, now, even though it's a very mundane part of society, we have no concept of what they're talking about.
Are we sure it's a joke though? Because the something walks into a bar is such a common trope now. I don't know. Was this maybe ancient Sumerian dogs could talk? I guess it'd have to be a joke, but like I still don't know how to interpret it.
Well, I think that's the thing that people are drawn to because it is that classic, a thing walks into a bar and it's, wow, this joke's been around for 4,000 years or something.
It was the invention of the setup, but the punchline is still 200 years away. Like they haven't figured out how to end jokes yet.
That innovation had not come around yet. There hadn't been enough war to innovate that.
Knock. And then you just wait. There's
No one's there.
Who's there? Me. Sorry, I'm workshopping it. I know I have something.
This reminds me of, have you ever been to Ford's Theater in D.C.? It's the theater that Abraham Lincoln was shot in.
Right.
It's still there. You can still go get tours of it. And they tell you, because this is something that if you think about it even for a minute, it totally makes sense why. Lincoln was shot in the back of the head, and he was shot while everyone was seated in the theater. So why didn't people hear the gunshot? And it was because they had just told a joke on stage, and the guy shooting him knew that there would be a joke at that point.
Because
So
he was
waited.
an actor.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm going to read you the joke.
Oh.
I know enough to turn you inside out, old gal, you sockdagilizing old man trap. And the audience went wild. Loud enough that a gunshot in a small room, it's not that small, but it's small relative to some of the theaters we use today. Nobody heard it.
Until he jumped off and landed on the stage and broke his ankle. Yeah.
So yes, there's several of these examples. I'm sure we can all come up with them.
Can you go back though? What was the word that you said in that line, that joke?
It's hard to pronounce.
Octogenarian?
Sockdagilizing.
Sockdagilizing?
Sockdagilizing.
I need a thesaurus for that joke.
Yeah, there's a discussion here on this forum that I found it on that they're like, what does that even mean?
What on
It's
earth?
just a nonsense word, they think. However, it does appear in the Merriam-Webster dictionary listed as something that settles a matter or a finisher or something outstanding or exceptional. Either way, still doesn't make sense. It's not like blatantly obvious what this joke is.
Maybe you'd have to watch the entire play to get it. I don't know.
You could probably read it.
Our American Cousin, for those who want to know.
Yeah, that's right.
So there are some guesses as to this dog joke and what it means. One explanation is that the dog's eyes are closed, so he'll open one of his eyes. It doesn't sound particularly funny.
That doesn't
but
sound funny, no.
the other one, they suspected it might have been a political cartoon and it's lampooning a politician at the time that have to know who the politician is to get the joke or something. Another explanation is it's a dirty joke. The bar is a tavern or a brothel, and what the dog wants to open is the woman's that part.
Gotcha.
But the bottom line is we don't get it. Nobody knows what the joke is.
Nobody knows.
Right. So how do we translate that to now? What now?
Like what jokes now would people not be able to get?
Yeah, like what?
I bet in the vein of jokes making no sense to people in the future, I think Cari's right that know your meme is going to be invaluable, because how the hell are you going to explain Pepe the Frog or whatever?
I need that now.
Dat boy.
Yeah, I'm pretty lost online, and I'm a digital native, so...
Right, yeah. We're quite online, and even then, you just don't know what's happening sometimes. Like, we're recording this just after our episode with Simon Clark came out, and he referenced that niche empty feet, which is a great meme that makes no sense. And in the future, will make just as little sense. I mean, it makes sense
confounding.
scientifically, but what?
Well, when you think about the
sorry.
nature of humor, like inside jokes and stuff like that, like we'll probably end this podcast with some inside joke that if we said it to anybody else in the world, they wouldn't get what the joke came from.
Wow, have you been on
Tracy's
this
figured
show
out our
before?
formula.
Jesus. Joe just calling us
We
out.
don't do that every episode. What are you talking about?
We are completely obtuse. What are you talking about? But that's the point. Like we all have inside jokes and things that we maybe only a few people get, and maybe that's what this was. It was just like maybe it was somebody at the tavern was drunk and came up with it, and it was like the third part of a multi-part joke, and then they just wrote it down.
Somebody else was like, "That's the best and first joke I've ever heard."
I'm going to cuneiform that.
I have to go home and mark this down and then put it in an oven to preserve it for all time.
Exactly. So the other thing she talked about, I'll just jump ship real quick. Talked about the third spice. Have you heard about this whole thing about the third spice?
No.
I've heard this too. So like right now, when you sit down at a dinner table at a restaurant or something, you got the salt shaker, you got the pepper shake. Mm-hmm. In art and in literature from 1800s onwards, there's a third shaker, and nobody knows what it is.
What?
And it's since disappeared, though? So it was, like, around for, what, like 100 years and then gone again?
Well, as she mentioned, like, one of the theories is that it's just sugar. Because we actually do have the little sugar caddies for your iced tea.
Yeah.
Like, that does sit at the
Yeah.
table often. So some people think that. Some people think it was mustard. But I think the bigger question that I found interesting anyway is, like, of all the spices on the planet, how did we come down to peppercorn and salt
So good.
I mean, salt makes total sense.
as a flavoring?
But pepper. I think the third spice would actually... Have you seen those Smucker's peanut butter and jelly jars where they mix the two together because we're just too lazy as a society to have two separate jars?
No.
I think somebody combined salt, pepper into one thing, and they were like, "Hey, you want to save time?
Yeah.
Just I pre-mixed
Try
your salt and
my
pepper
new
for you."
spice, the Spepper.
Someday they're going to name a rap group after this.
Pult. Push it. Okay.
Push this pepper.
I had never heard of the third spice, though. Okay,
That's interesting.
cool.
I'm gonna have to look up that later.
And one of the things that I was looking at, a blog post, like had an old table set, basically, and it actually had 4 places. And they think that one of them was probably vinegar.
Oil, maybe.
There's various condiments that have been used throughout the years. I mean, like the Roman fish sauce garum.
Garum.
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff's gross.
Have you ever tried it?
It's just no. I mean, I don't know if anybody makes it now, but it's just like rotting fish.
Yeah, it's literally rotting fish.
Yeah, and they loved it in ancient Rome. They were all about garum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to the
Gross.
channel Tasting History. Have you ever watched Tasting History with Max
No.
Miller? Okay,
No.
watch one episode. You'll be binging it for the rest of the weekend, I promise. But he goes through and
Okay.
finds like ancient recipes and then remakes them and tries them out and tells the history of the thing that's going on at the time. He calls it garum, I guess that's how you're supposed to say it. But he makes it and tries it, and he said it's like the fish sauce you might get at like a Chinese restaurant or something like that. It's just somehow it's not that bad, really.
I mean, a mild fermentation is like kimchi is fermented
True.
and a bunch of other
Yeah.
things. Like a lot, soy sauce is fermented. There's a lot of fermentation in food, but
This is what they had to do before tomatoes came over from South America.
Yeah.
And the invention of ketchup. This
Yeah.
is
the
rotten
perfect
fish.
condiment.
Next
Ugh.
best thing.
Yucky.
So like the bigger point that Cari was bringing up was like there's this kind of this thing from the past where like they documented big historical events like the military campaigns like we were talking about a second ago and all that, but they didn't really talk about the basic everyday life things that people lived through, which is 99% of the human experience.
Yeah.
So there's so much
Yeah.
that we've just lost, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And Trace, I thought you might be interested in all this because like you did the historical reenactment thing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
there was a channel. I went down a Victorian rabbit hole for a while. I just became obsessed with the Victorian age. There was some couple that was basically they just decided to live in Victorian times and they bought a Victorian house and they dressed in Victorian clothes and they only used Victorian kitchen stuff and
Ooh, that sounds awful.
How long did that
they made
last?
sure their
How long did
wallpaper
they
had arsenic
make
on
for?
it. So, but the thing about it though, in the past I would have thought that was just really dumb. But then I started thinking, I was like, but there's so many things that they were just like discovering there were these like tools
Yeah.
that nobody really knew what they were for anymore, and they just kind of like figured it out just by living it.
Joe, I have to ask, bearing all this in mind that it's usually the mundane things that don't get recorded that are probably most subject to misinterpretation, did you just get creative and think of anything in our day-to-day life that might fit the bill here and alternative explanations that could exist for them?
Well, I tried to go down that road. We are like 10 years into a new human era where like we document everything and it's like digitally recorded somewhere. So assuming technology just continues in the path that it's going in, and I guess there's also the fact that there's media that we don't use anymore. If you have a VHS tape now, you got to go find a VCR, and it's hard to find them these days. But assuming in the future that they can like read hard drives and that kind of thing, cloud storage or whatever, I don't know what that would be. I'm trying to think of something that would be so mundane that nobody has documented it on TikTok or anything, like tying shoes or something. I mean,
Even that, there's got to be a WikiHow on it.
I think it would be fair to assume also the things, like the few things that we wouldn't want to make public, which might be like a very private, intimate, like going to the restroom. Sort of like, I don't know if there's anything specific in the bathroom.
No, I
It
can't.
might be. We did an episode on the invention of toilet paper, which as it turns out is much more recent than you might realize. It's only been like in vogue for a little over 100 years. And I can imagine a future where it goes away again in favor of bidets, and then people in the future having to explain what the hell is this little toilet paper holder for. Maybe it's like a handrail for when it was after you had a lot of Taco Bell. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something like that.
they would probably move to the 3 seashells.
The 3 seashells. Again, because Demolition Man is the best predictor of the future.
And there it
There it
is.
is. Brought it back.
Had to come to demo, man.
No, I was just listening to the last episode where you were talking about Demolition Man. And I have thoughts, by the way, but we don't have to derail it.
Okay. We'll do that bonus
right.
episode. I think that's a really good point, Julian, that it might be something like that, like a handle. I'm also trying to think of something like in the kitchen, something that is so a cutting board or something that's just so basic that we wouldn't even know what to think about that.
Ooh. I think a lot of as seen on TV products that are so absurdly niche would have to be
Slap
explained
chop.
somehow. Yeah, the sham wow. Like, why?
Wow.
What is this? What could this possibly? This plastic sheet that absorbs nothing, just pushes water around. What could this possibly be used for?
That's funny. Yeah, there's got to be stuff like that.
Loincloth.
If you're fast forwarding thousands of years, maybe just even a sponge might not be. I guess we would understand what it is.
Well,
but,
if
who knows? A loofah.
if they had like replicator technology, then basically
Yeah.
all kitchen appliances would be mysterious.
You don't need them. Yeah.
Oh.
Even in Star Trek, they talk about that, where Riker in TNG makes eggs once, and they're terrible. He made them for everyone, and everybody was like, why did you do this?
By hand, he makes them by
You
hand.
put your hand on it? Ew.
He, cooked it. And
Yeah.
they were like, this is gross. Don't do it. It tastes terrible.
I could picture like a gas oven, right? Like 1,000 years in the future. And they're like, they don't even realize it ignites. They're like, this is where they suffocated their chickens before eating them or something.
if you're in a Latino family, this is where they
this is where
stored
they
their pots and
euthanized.
pans.
So to stay in the vein of the motel of mysteries, I think the future people would have to assume that we're much more primitive than we are.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
much more like focused on ritual and necessarily things that have like symbolic
Yeah.
usage, but not
Yeah.
like actual usage.
That is another thing. Is I think about this a lot with like archaeology, because they do tend to like assign big, deep spiritual meaning to all these like things that they find. Like they find a little figurine of a Venus or something like that. It's, oh, they worshipped this figurine. No, the guy probably just carved it.
Maybe their daughter gave it to them and
Yeah.
they really liked it and they kept it.
Maybe that was their Barbie doll back in the day.
I have all sorts of crap in this room. That there's a bunch of little squishy owls back there. It was just a gift from a friend. I have 7 of them. It doesn't mean I really
It means you worship the owl deity.
interesting.
So I mean, you could do that with anything, really. I mean, like you just did. Just start looking around you. Find some deep spiritual
Yeah.
significance to the lint roller on my desk here. This
Yeah.
is how I wash the sin away. It's
The sin of
Brush
dog
the sin
hair.
off of me.
Ritualistically.
Yeah. So, okay.
Clearly used frequently because the sheets come off and they can then be ritualistically burned using this fire device that he has that says vanilla on it. I don't know what vanilla is, but...
It's the vanilla altar. Another thing. So I did a video earlier this year that was basically trying to figure out like what the world would be like in the year 2100. I read all these articles of people like prognosticating and stuff. And one of the things that some people were suggesting was that we get rid of the black screen that we carry with us everywhere, and it gets replaced by like a neural cap that you wear, and it like reads your thoughts, and it can like by the use of microwave radiation or whatever, it can put little thoughts and memories in there, and you could even share your emotion with somebody else. Like you could just project your emotion to someone. If technology progressed that much, then yeah, they might look at something like this and just be like, "What? Why were they carrying these things? Was this just like a mirror that they would hold up and they would use to?"
Yeah, they're all very vain.
These
back then.
people.
No, that was so the governments could know where they were at all times. And so they could be notified of the nearest Starbucks.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
Another option, though, is like society gets knocked back to the Stone Age and we lose all information about like technology and stuff, which again, this would just be like, what the hell is this? And couldn't even plug it in.
Then you're in the world of when they do fictions where they're like the big metal bird that they and like
the
kind of stuff like that.
precursors.
Yeah. So then the whole thing becomes, everything is a mystery. All the mundane things become mysteries. But I really liked your point about we look at things and we assign them all this deep spiritual meaning or whatever. I toured the Temple of Karnak in Egypt, which is really cool, and Luxor Temple and a bunch of these other temples in all over. And one of the temples on the wall you can see is ancient Egyptian tracking of the gifts given to the temple. And they had this is a deep spiritual, it literally looked like an Excel spreadsheet. I swear to God, it was rows and columns. Each column had a year or like a delineation of time. And then there was hash marks and like symbols to show how much they donated. And it was just like, this is thousands of years old, but it is a spreadsheet carved on a wall. And it was just like, that's incredible.
Can you imagine a record being preserved for all time of you being like a deadbeat?
Yeah.
Oh, this guy's year over year not donating enough to his dead king.
I'll never outlive
Thousands
this.
of years in the future.
That's what you call a permanent record.
Yeah.
It's so embarrassing. I was having a hard year, okay?
I was out of town. God.
Out of town.
I think he was in denial.
Hey.
And that's the first joke that was ever told.
Well, Cari, thank you for asking your question.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Joe, thank you for answering your question. Let's take another break and come back, and I'll round us out with a question about teeny tiny food.
Hello and welcome back to That's Absurd. Please elaborate. We've tackled two questions that were historical in nature, and now we get one that's delicious, possibly even more delicious than normal.
Ooh,
in
that's
its content.
correct.
Trace,
Yeah.
What's your question?
So this question comes from Reyna.
Hi, Trace and Julian. My name is Reyna. I'm from Bradenton, Florida, and my question is, why are mini foods so much tastier than their normal-sized counterparts? I came up with this question while I was eating the mini version of a certain colorful, candy-coated chocolate that comes in a really fun tube. Okay, thanks for your help. Bye.
You know, I was trying to think if Reyna was right and had a point on this, and then when she mentioned the specific example, I was like, yep, bullseye. Those are, in fact, better. Agreed.
I do like that we have been so trained by brands and media that we feel like we can't say that it's M&Ms. Like there's something like Mars is gonna come sue us if we say the name of their candy.
The company, not the Roman god of war.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Both.
He's very litigious.
That Mars guy. Go to war in the courtroom.
But yes, Reyna, that is an excellent example. And Reyna, in their writing of the question, did mention M&Ms. They said a regular M&M is delicious, but those teeny tiny mini M&Ms are next level. Good! Exclamation point. Is it a ratios and proportions thing? Has there been any published research about it? I wanted to lead this off and ask, What is your favorite mini food? Is it mini M&Ms?
My brain goes to like bagel bites, like little mini pizzas.
I was thinking that.
What?
Or Totino's pizza rolls.
Oh, when pizza's on a bagel, I can eat pizza anytime.
Pizza in the morning, pizza in the evening, pizza at supper time.
Wow, those things are stuck in our heads.
I just see Pete Davidson going, Totino's pizza rolls. That's
Try lean pockets, too. So
Never.
I looked up... No, I'm never going to try
never.
that. Totino's pizza rolls with ketchup is awesome.
No.
I'm sorry
okay.
to say.
No. Go on, though.
I was thinking about it today. I think for me, it's eclairs. I don't know. Maybe that's too fancy, but or like a donut or something. I like a pastry that's little. So like a little donut hole is for me sometimes better than a donut. A little teeny eclair is sometimes better than one that I have to take like multiple bites of. I can just pop one in my mouth. I'm into that.
You ever do the thing where you buy a donut and you want two, but you know you probably shouldn't have two, so you get 4 donut holes, which is basically another donut?
Yeah.
But you feel like it's less.
No, it's fine.
No,
Doesn't
but it's
count.
less because it's
the-
4 little ones.
It's the negative space of the donut. It's, in fact, the anti-donut.
Right, so
Yeah.
you're undoing
So
the first
You're-
donut.
yeah.
It's all math, guys.
Relativity. It's
You
all
eat a
relativity.
donut and then a donut hole. Like, it goes the other way.
Yeah, Reyna asked if there had been published research about teeny tiny mini foods, and I couldn't find anything. And I looked on Google Scholar, and I looked everywhere for miniature food, tiny food, minuscule, micro. Firstly, part of it is coming up with a standard term for food that is smaller, that isn't just petit four, because it's not going to be what we're talking about. But I did then go into the like idea of size of food per, say, like flavonoids or flavins or, with like nutrients and things. And there are some studies that show that smaller fruits and vegetables are different from larger ones. We, in the US and in the West in general, created this commercial industrial food system, and we harvest per unit of harvested area. We call it yield. And so we want a high yield for the same amount of acreage or hectarage. Is that what it would be in SI units? Anyway.
Hectares, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hectarage? I'm not really sure. Either way, I like to use grapes as an example. I think it's easy. Everybody can picture them, right? A commercial table grape is pretty big. We're talking a few cubic centimeters, like a cubic inch of grape for one. The ones you buy at the stores without seeds in the US are huge. That's a huge grape. But if you go to a winery or you go somewhere with old world grapes, those are teeny tiny little grapes, and they have a high sugar content. There's more skin relative to the grape interior. There's less water in them. They have a very powerful punching of flavor versus like a big watery table grape. It just depends what you're trying to do. They're used for different things. And so there are studies that show larger fruits and veggies might have fewer nutrients than the smaller ones, but the data isn't super clear. The people who did the studies are like the nonprofit for organic farming. And I'm just like, look, I have nothing against organic farming, but you're biased just by your goals of your organization. And so that's fine. And also there's been any nutrition and food studies in general, I'm almost always skeptical of. There's just been too many scandals, and there's too much like pea hacking and data dredging.
So hard to get good information about food. It's so my nightmare in researching.
It really is, because it's like it's very self-reported often, or it's made by, there's so much money to be made. There's a reason that people are like, eggs are bad for you. Wait, no, they're good for you. Oh, wine, you should drink a lot. You shouldn't drink much. Oh, coffee is good. Oh, coffee is bad.
The tendency also to take a small result, very carefully scientifically worded, there is some evidence of an increased risk, blah, 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 to potatoes cause cancer. It's been proven.
Right.
Like,
Please click this.
The jump that most people make. Yeah.
So I'm going to eschew all of that. And instead, I'm going to go to something that I think Julian's going to get excited about. The square cube law.
Yes! I was gonna bring it up if you didn't. Oh,
Julian,
go on.
What is the square cube law?
Well, it's this phenomenon where the different dimensions don't increase linear as you increase one dimension, right?
Yes.
So
Right.
surface area, being area, is a squared dimension, but it does not increase linearly as volume increases, right? Which is a three-dimensional dimension.
Right.
As volume
So-
goes up, it gets bigger faster than surface area does.
Yes.
Which is why certain things have limited size, like our cells, right?
Yes.
They rely on the surface area of their exterior to exchange things with their environment, waste and take in nutrients. But if they're too big, internally, if their volume's too great, they can't exchange things in the proper rate. And so they're limited to a size that works. Did that basically sum it up? Did I encompass that?
Yeah, I think you encompassed it. This was come up with, I guess, by Galileo, the old school astronomy dude. Basically, if you increase the surface area by 2, you increase the volume by a non-linear number, so something cubed maybe. So think of a Rubik's Cube puzzle. 1 cube of a Rubik's Cube, okay? That's 1 cube. It's got a side of 1. It's got a volume, however, of 1. You have 2 cubes on a side. Now you have a perimeter of 2, but you have 8 cubes in that same space. You have 3 cubes on a side. Now you have that full Rubik's Cube. It's just 3 on a side, but it's 27 cubes in that 3-dimensional space. So it's 3 times larger in terms of its side, but it's 27 times more massive. So it's just, we're increasing things in an exponential rate. This is why we can't have kaijus without magic, unfortunately. Why human bodies can only get so big, because the heart doesn't grow at the same rate as you grow in size. Anything, like why ants and other exoskeleton-based animals can only get so big, because they get too heavy, because their mass increases too much relative to their size. So take, for example, M&Ms. Or when you want to go Brit Commonwealth friendly Smarties or whatever. It doesn't matter. So M&Ms, somebody I found did the math. And at the time in 2005, the M&M company Mars released a mega M&M.
Ooh,
and
a capital M&M.
Double capital,
M&M.
really, yes. And then we have the regular M&M, and then we have the mini M&M. Now, the thing about the square cube rule is that as the M&M increases in size, it has more surface area, but the volume inside of the M&M increases exponentially. So we're getting a lot more chocolate for candy coating surface area. And someone did the math and found that it was about 30% larger, the mega M&M, and did indeed hold 3 times the amount of chocolate in the same, and it was only about 9 millimeters or so in size. Like, it wasn't that much bigger, but it was humongous in terms of the amount of chocolate inside. They posted their work. I can link to it in the show notes.
Somebody really sat down.
Literally did calculus and took pictures and then had a standard size for their pixels, and it was just incredible.
I love nerds.
Yeah, I love nerds.
We're talking about M&Ms though.
But
yeah, the nerds are good.
But if they
too.
were bigger, then
Yeah,
the same rules
both
would
are excellent. Yeah, it
I
would.
don't know,
Yeah,
because nerds
still.
just all sugar all the way through, right? Do they have a coating? I don't
They
know.
do. They have a candy coating on the outside of the sugar. I used to suck on them until they were sharp, and then I would chew them. And I love nerds. Anyway,
until it just go up your mouth.
yeah, definitely. It was that and Captain Crunch. You'd be bleeding all day. So they also posted their work to look at the candy shell on the outside of the chocolate. So the regular M&M has 1x the amount of chocolate as an M&M, and it's about 0.8 millimeters of chocolate. Citing this guy's work, what he did is he used an X-Acto knife to cut the M&M in half and then measured a cross section, then assumed that because they're symmetrical, we can just make some assumptions based on volume. So the regular M&M is 0.8 millimeters, has 1x the chocolate. The mega is even bigger, but the candy coating is thinner. It's only 0.6 millimeters thick, but there's 3 times the amount of chocolate. That would mean that the mini would go the other way, right? Like we would have thicker candy. So we're looking at around 1 millimeter of, if it's linear, it's not, but we're making some assumptions. So the mini would have 1 millimeter of thickness of candy coating and a third the amount of chocolate. So maybe the mini M&M tastes better because of the square cube rule. Their surface area ratio means it has more candy coating per chocolate, which totally makes sense because M&M chocolate is not good.
I was going to say that. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, which is why also the mega M&M with 3x the amount of chocolate did not last very long and existed from like 2005 until just like a very short time afterward. They did re-release the mega M&M in, I swear to God, 2024, March of this year, they released it.
She's back!
As a peanut butter flavor only. So they don't. They are like, no, the chocolate's not good. We're just gonna put peanut butter in it.
I was actually going to say, if there's a peanut M&M, did they find giant peanuts for the mega, or it makes sense that they put more peanut butter filling in there.
So following this logic, the smaller M&Ms taste better because it's more candy coating and less of the bad chocolate.
Right.
So maybe someday they'll release an Oops All Coating.
Oh, now that I would try. Just M. Yeah, just M.
M's.
MCs. Just M&M candy. So the square cube law, that applies to a lot of different things. You know, think about other candies and other foods. Discuss. What do you think? And while you're thinking about it, oh no, Julian, you have it right there. Go.
Well, okay, so I as you were talking, my knee-jerk reaction when she brought up mini M&Ms was exactly this. Was like, oh, you're going to get more candy. The candy's probably better because American chocolate is cheap and waxy and kind of bad.
Not great, yeah.
But I had another thought as you were talking, and that is, you remember we had a whole episode where you brought up some machine with a crazy name.
Yes.
That evaluates more than just like flavor of a food, but like crunchiness and all these different variables on a multi-dimensional chart to evaluate food like mouthfeel as well.
Yes.
And part of me is wondering if mini M&Ms have an inherently more satisfying like little crunch pop whatever in your mouth because of their size.
It's entirely possible. I hadn't even considered that in this research. I was literally just going down the reasons why, because this is generally speaking smaller things generally, but it could be both, right? There's the Por qué no los dos, Julian.
You're approaching it purely from a flavor perspective, and I think that's valid. But I also, having eaten too many tubes of mini M&Ms, realized that one of my favorite parts is just like the little crunch of the little pop.
Yeah, that little crunch.
Mini M&M.
Yeah, but
and I think that's important.
You're only going to get that crunch, to Reyna's point, at that size as well, right? That smaller size is much more satisfying because it gives you, that candy coating gives you a better crunch. So what other foods are better when they are smaller? Because yes, of course, Reyna went right to the classic example, M&M, mini M&M. And then we used mega M&M, which again only existed for a short period of time, to give us some idea. But what other foods are better, mini?
I also think of how when you go, if you've ever been to like a Michelin star restaurant, have either of you been to like super fancy?
I love fancy
What are the
restaurants.
portion sizes of these restaurants?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're
very tiny.
Microscopic.
We're going
right?
to come back to that in a minute.
Oh, then I'll
wait.
wait.
Yes. So here's some of the examples that I wrote. Imagine you have a regular size pie. Which pie would taste better? A larger Costco-sized pie or a smaller hand pie? I say this to say flaky crust, maybe the smaller one. Better filling, maybe the bigger one, right? Because it's about that square cube law, and the amount of crust is going to change relative to the size of the
I have
pie.
to say, I like the crust.
Yeah. So
You're
like a hand pie
guy.
Hand pies are great.
I just learned something about
It's
myself
all about
today.
that filling. Yeah.
A large burger, like a really large burger, you get a lot of middle beef, like the middle of the beef, as opposed to a smash burger where all of the edges are crispy.
Oh, so good.
Much better. A large cake, mostly cake, not a lot of icing or frosting. Smaller cakes, like a mini cupcake, it's like half frosting, half cake. Depends on what you like.
There's a ratio question.
Right. A large Reese's peanut butter cup or any other peanut butter cup. Regular size, smaller, 1-to-1 ratio of chocolate to peanut butter. Bigger, more peanut butter, less chocolate.
This is a calculus optimization problem then.
It 100%
If you could
is. Julian,
quantify
thank you.
how much contributes to the overall goodness of the food, you could
I pulled
plot
my
a
headphones
point
out. I was so excited.
to meet. Right?
Yes.
This is finally an application for calculus.
Finally, Sir Isaac Newton has served a purpose.
Now, he was eating a pie and he thought, this pie is not the right size
It was an apple
relative
pie.
to crust
It
and
fell on his
filling,
head.
and I need to determine the perfect size. The person who did the M&Ms did the calculus, hand wrote it out, took pictures. It's awesome.
Wow.
So this holds true with anything. Bigger fruits have less peel to flesh ratios. Again, grapes, the smaller ones have more skin relative to the interior, and so on and so forth. Larger spaceship needs less surface area to cover than a smaller spaceship. Lots of small spaceships, and so on and so forth. So, to come back to what Julian just mentioned about culinary sciences, this works on a variety of levels in the culinary sciences. So slicing or grinding things into tinier pieces, chefs know is better. There's a reason that they chop things with very sharp knives into very small pieces when they make stuff. Not only does it melt easier, it's easier to chew and to digest. It changes the flavor of them. It changes the aromatics that come out. It changes the way that the texture works. It's more exposed to the air because of that square cube law. You have more surface area with a bunch of little things than you do with one big thing. And chefs know this, so they optimize their foods, especially in fancy restaurants, to do that. It doesn't mean that smaller equals better, but it does mean that smaller can affect flavor and taste, which is pretty cool. And in fact, the best chocolate in the world is ground basically to a powder before it's mixed in to be made into chocolate. We know American chocolate, they don't do this because it's terrible. But when you do this, the best chocolate in the world, like a dark chocolate, if you grind it really fine, it brings out a cocoa intensity. Milk chocolate, it makes it more creamy tasting and texture. And then again, that's why Hershey's chocolate is trash. So
Your Mackinac Island fudge making friends, though.
No, Mackinac Island fudge is absolutely
the best.
delicious. Don't
Caveat:
even
Mackinac fudge,
say
great.
otherwise.
Hershey's chocolate,
It's the best. It is absolutely
This
delicious.
episode
Go
brought to you by
Mace
Hershey's Chocolate.
Let's take a break for our sponsor.
Hershey's Chocolate. Damn it.
Oh, no.
So, Julian mentioned smaller portions. How do you two feel about going to a restaurant with smaller portions? As American human men.
Unhappy,
Sure.
generally.
I'm actually
Got it.
the other way on that. I think that portion size has
Really?
gotten out of control in most places. So when I see something that's fitting for my hummingbird-sized stomach, it's okay.
I
Yeah.
guess my question is, am I paying for it?
Wow.
Because I have been to those gourmet restaurants and they bring out a dollop of cream and that's
Yeah.
here's your course, and I'm like, this is $100.
Yeah.
What?
But is that one of 7 courses?
Right.
Yeah.
The thing is, you typically get 12 courses or
Ooh,
more.
12 spoonfuls of cream. Hooray.
But
Like,
people
How many
are
do you
typically...
need?
Well,
I think, you know what? Might not have been a Michelin star. It might have just been my cousin with some Cool Whip in the back. Who just kept bringing out more Cool Whip. Now that I think about it.
so there are studies that show smaller portions taste better. If you give me a buffet, I'm not going to savor any individual bite of any food because it's unlimited and there's lots of it. So every individual bite matters less. This is the reason I don't like baseball because there's just too much of it.
It's too much
If there was a
baseball in
lot
baseball.
less of it, every game and every pitch would matter. But when there are hundreds of games and thousands of pitches, every individual pitch is hard for me to get excited about. There was a psych experiment where half of the students were told they would be tasting 2 chocolates. Then they were shown a tray of 6 chocolate. The other half of the participants were shown a tray of 6 delicious chocolates to create the expectation that they would get all the chocolate. And then after they tasted 2, they stopped the experiment and told them that was the end. Who do you think enjoyed the chocolate more?
That first group.
Right,
For sure.
because you told them you get 2, and then you showed them that there were more than 2, as opposed to having an expectation of 6 chocolates and then getting only 2. And so, Julian, maybe you should just moderate your expectations when you go to a restaurant.
Yeah, I guess
Ask
so.
us,
I
you know?
I was wondering, when you go to a Michelin star restaurant, I think part of it is this psychological expectation of like, well, I'm probably going to pay a lot of money and my portions are really small, so I have to really savor it. And I almost wonder if the chefs also do that intentionally of like, hey, focus on this tiny thing that I've made.
100%. Not only are the ingredients typically sourced in a completely different way, they're not industrial food ingredients. They're typically like, these were grown, there were 100 of them, and you get to eat some of one. That's typically, aside from that, the economics of it, people who knew that they only got 2, they literally filmed them, and they said they ate slower, they savored and paid more attention based on their self-reporting, and they felt more satisfied after eating only the 2 chocolates, when asked how much they enjoyed the chocolate, they enjoyed them equally. But the people who knew they were only going to taste 2 felt better about the experience. And they also did variations on the study where they showed people different numbers of chocolates. So they said you're going to get 2, and then they showed them 2. Or they said you're going to get 2, and they showed them like 4 or 8 or whatever. They also told them in variations that they would be there for 30 minutes no matter what and how many chocolates they showed them. And so the people who knew they were only going to get 2 chewed more. Like they chewed like 11 and a half times to the other people who like chewed a couple times, were just tossing them down because there were so many chocolates. So the expectation matters, as does the presentation. So in mini foods, you have a different expectation. There's either a lot of them and they're mini, or you're going to have one and so you're going to savor it because it's smaller. On top of that, I mean, think about like a bag of sweets or chips or whatever. If you know there's a limited amount, it's a small bag versus a very large bag, you're going to treat those completely differently. And by the time you get to the middle of a bag, when you're eating the small bag, you get to the middle of the bag and you're like, well, there's not very much left in here. You're savoring every one that you get, as opposed to this giant bag. You get halfway through the bag. There's still a lot of bag there. I don't really care about individual ones. So really, really interesting, the psychology of it. There was a study in the journal Flavor, with a U, it's British, I guess, so that's a real journal, and they said that the size, weight, and shape and color of the blank changes the flavor. Any guess what the blank is?
Size, shape, and color.
Size, weight, shape, and color of...
the plate.
Oh. I'm going to go with plate. I think that's a good answer.
Yes, it is the cutlery and the plates can change the flavor. There was a study done by Oxford University. I don't know where that is. It might be. I don't know if it's reputable or not. But
yeah, let me email Dr. Knightkendike again. Ask him, hey, just by the way, on a map, where do you work?
So they cite a lot of other studies in this cutlery study, but they essentially say like a heavier fork. When you eat something, it makes you experience the food differently than a lighter fork. So if you're eating yogurt with a light plastic spoon versus a big, heavy metal spoon, you're going to feel differently about the yogurt you're eating, which is incredible.
Right. Well, not a spoon made of heavy metals, though.
Not one made of pewter or...
So if you're flying first class and they actually bring you real silverware, and it's like, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, you're gonna think of your food differently than when they give you the bamboo silverware that you're just like
bamboo-ware.
Yeah, and so they also cite several studies where they served popcorn to participants in different colored bowls: white, blue, green, and red. And the participants rated the popcorn based on sweetness, saltiness, and overall liking of said popcorn. They served them sweet popcorn and salty popcorn. They showed the ingredients in the study. There was no sugar in the salt popcorn, and there was no salt on the sweet popcorn. However, people who ate sweet popcorn from a blue bowl rated it as saltier. There's no salt on this popcorn, but they rated it saltier if it came out of a bowl that was blue. The salty popcorn rated sweeter when it came from a red bowl, even though there was no sugar or sweetness on the salty popcorn at all. It was exactly the same.
I'm going to conduct this experiment at movie night. I have multicolored bowls. I'm going to invite some friends over.
You're watching the movie and
Tell your
popcorn,
friends.
you're like taking notes. And...
How would you rate the saltiness of your pop? It's a great movie, right? Demolition Man, classic. Tell me about the popcorn.
That's your opportunity.
Excellent. There are other examples of this as well. When asked to taste things from blue, green, yellow, or red glasses, which of those would you say is the most thirst quenching? Blue, green, yellow, or red?
Blue. It has to be blue.
It's blue.
It has
Absolutely.
to be.
Yes. They found in their study that people would drink the same thing out of all 4 glasses, and the blue one was rated as the most thirst
Okay, so
quenching.
isn't there something about the blue plate special?
Oh, I don't know what that has to do with.
So, okay, well, I didn't know if you were going to go there or not, but like I had heard that the reason why they started doing a blue plate special at wherever that was, Denny's or whatever, was that like it made you less hungry. The color blue made you less hungry, or it made the food taste better. It was like they had some reason for it.
That's cool. I don't know. I'm looking it up.
I did find something. A study published in 2018 in the journal Appetite found that people who used blue plates ate less than those who munched off white plates.
Yes. So I didn't mention, but there are several studies where like you eat less when you use large cutlery, like you use a large fork. You eat less because even though the size of the food is smaller relative to the fork, you feel like you're eating more. I decided not to mention some of these because, again, what we started at the beginning, a lot of these food things are self-reported. It's very difficult to get good data. Everyone has a different experience. Flavor versus taste is not the same. It's emotional. It's also based on your own personal history. However, to go back to the color thing, the effect of color on taste perception, according to this study in Flavor, finds that people build up expectations associated with certain colors in certain contexts, and then they bring that to their tasting. So there may be natural associations between colors and tastes that have been learned over the course of their lives, but it also could have been learned over the course of evolution. So redness may carry an expectation of fruit being riper or sweeter. If you think of dark and black plates, most people don't have them at home, so they might associate those with a fancy restaurant because they don't typically eat off of a dark colored plate. Most people eat off of white plates. So you might just think, oh, this is fancier. And there are several studies that show if you pay more for something, even if it's a cheap bottle of wine, you pay $100, you're going to rate it as better. So this is all to say, when it comes to mini foods, there might be something in not just the square cube rule, not just the way that it's made and whether there's enough flaky pastry versus interior stuff. It could have something just to do with the fact that you bought it specifically thinking that it was going to be like this cute little food that you enjoy eating already. And there's not actually a study on small food, but it would be very cool to do one. So if you're a scientist in the food area, do that. Think of the hamster with the teeny tiny burrito and the teeny tiny omelet. How much did you want to eat?
Love those
that
videos.
Like hamster. It's just so not the
hamster. You don't want to eat the hamster.
I don't want to eat
you
the
want
hamster.
to eat
Maybe a tiny
omelet.
hamster.
hamster food.
Tiny hamster ears taste better.
yeah.
Hamster's tinier than
They
maybe.
are
Yeah.
apparently more delicious.
More candy coating.
More of a crunch.
Yeah. Maybe less of a crunch. I have wanted to make a video about miniatures for so long. So without giving too much of the video away, doll houses are a miniature, not food, but a miniature that were common in the Victorian period with women. Not because they were like, oh, look at this cute little doll. It was a sense of control. It was a time when women had almost no control over their daily lives. They would marry so that they could have a secure future. We've all seen and or heard of Pride and Prejudice and all of these other like types of movies from that period. This dollhouse was a way that they could make it however they wanted. They could dress the characters however they wanted. They could put wallpaper wherever they wanted. They could get furniture however they wanted, and they didn't have to ask anybody else about it because it was theirs. I think it's the same with like men who like model trains. It's a way of asserting control over something that is small and easy to understand and control. And I wonder if there's something to that with food as well, right? We have these tiny little cupcake. I don't feel quite so bad if I eat 4 of them, even though, as Joe has already mentioned, it's probably equivalent. We just feel different about it. So small portion sizes encourage savoring the food a little more. They make us feel more in control, and they sometimes have better ratios of ingredients that maybe we prefer. So, Reyna, that's the answer to your question. Are mini foods objectively better? Maybe. Are they subjectively better? Absolutely.
Interesting. You know what I've been thinking about this whole time is baby carrots. Because I like baby carrots, but they are the exact same carrot as big carrots.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
they're just a
like
long
ugly
carrot that's
carrots.
been cut
into pieces.
Multiple small baby
But
carrots.
I prefer the baby
That's right.
carrots
quote
for some
unquote
reason.
baby.
They're also wetter. They're like stored in water. I wonder if that matters. But either way, baby carrots are delicious, man.
Oh,
I love
my
baby
carrots.
What about baby corn?
Oh, the little
Not
bitty,
better than regular
like in
corn.
the Chinese food.
Yeah, not better than regular corn.
I think because you're eating the cob portion with it, right? The cob is not delicious, and you eat around it with full-size corn, and you just raw dog that whole thing when you're eating the mini corn.
Ooh,
But it's not as good.
Lots of fiber.
Couldn't think of a better term for it, but yeah.
Well, that is a whole episode of That's Absurd, Please Elaborate, with 2 history questions and 1 ridiculous question about mini foods. And so thank you so much for listening, all of you out there. Joe, can you tell people where they can come find you if they want to get some more answers?
I am on the internet at this website called youtube.com. If you do a little search for Answers with Joe, I will come up. And my 800 plus videos that I've done over the last 10 years.
That's a lot of answers.
Yeah.
That's a lot of answers. Well, I hope people enjoy it. Go subscribe to Joe over on Answers with Joe. You can also find Joe on Nebula, where you can watch his videos, and you can listen to our podcast there as well. If you aren't on Nebula, go join. It supports the show. You can use our code, which is down in the show notes, nebula.tv/That's Absurd Show. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. The show was created, written, and produced by, well, at least Joe produced his section, but I produced some of the other parts.
And me, Julian Huguet, that's also one of the producers / writers / creators.
We'll figure this out someday. It was also produced and edited by the wonderful and wonderfully talented and probably enjoyer of mini foods, Kyle Sisk.
Mini food fiend, famously. Special thanks to listeners who submitted questions featured in this episode, Cari, Reyna, and of course our guest, Joe. If you would like to submit a question, look for the form in our show notes, or you can email us at hello@that'sabsurdshow.com or visit that website, that'sabsurdshow.com/ask. And we even have a voice line now where you can leave a full voicemail with all your thoughts on a question that you have. It's 302 Tape Show, TAPESHO. Also, if you've got the time, we'd appreciate if you leave a review wherever you're listening right now. Starts and Hars.
Starts
and Hars. I don't know what Spotify's doing nowadays, but that's probably one of the things they're using. And of course, always send in those questions. They make us laugh. They make the show possible. We couldn't do without you, so keep them coming. Not that we have a regular in-joke that we always close with, Trace, but what do we always say?
We always say, a Sumerian dog walks into a bar and says, "Sockagilizing old man trap."
With a toilet seat on its head.
The toilet seat. When a raw-dogged piece of corn cob walks into a bar and says, "Starts and Hars."